Hello there and welcome to an extra special Tom's Warhammer Minis tutorials. Miao Ying, the Storm Dragon. She is the supreme matriarch of Northern Cathay, ruling supremely over Nangao. She is considered to be the favoured of the celestial dragon himself. She is cold, aloof and tactile amongst her fellow dragons, and a truly terrifying force to behold when enraged in her dragon form. Now, when Warhammer Official reveal their models, there are just some that I want to paint in that very instant. They often go on to be the models of the year that are voted by us, the Warhammer community. The colour scheme and nature of this model takes me back nostalgically to happy childhood memories of very similar, Oriental-inspired but non-Warhammer related stuff. And I have loved every second of painting this absolute beauty of a model. In today's video, I'll showcase my take on the box art scheme, keeping it very loyal with some minor alterations where I wanted to personalise and improve the model. I'll take you through a deep dive of the colours the Eavy Metal team have most likely used, especially in picking out things like the scales and creating a three-tone approach of purple colours to make the Storm Dragon stand out spectacularly. Now, the YouTubers who are privileged enough to get a free copy from Games Workshop have already done their tutorials. You'll hopefully see, though, the true passion and love, as well as a lot of image studying that I've done and my own advanced knowledge of contrast painting shining through, making this beautiful centerpiece. So without further ado, grab your brushes and grab your paints, and let's get hobbying on this awesome model. And so we begin on the mighty Storm Dragon herself. Now, if you've been following me for a while, especially on Instagram, you know I am very excited. A, to get my hands on this model, B, to paint it up. I adore it ever since it was revealed. There's a couple of things to note. I have primed the entire model in white scar. And because the base is large and open, because I'm going to be applying grass and other things later on so I can cover up mistakes, I've decided, right, let's get it primed. Let's get that texture paint on so it dries so I can finish the model super speedy quick. And the texture paint I've used here is a Grelin Badland. It's what I use across all of my Grand Cathay miniatures. Now, I'm going to be tackling this in different areas. The first bit I'm going to do is the hair. What I have considered is how we're going to be doing the scales, and it's something for you to consider as well. There are three distinct areas. You've got all the soft flesh, so this is the face, the hands, the feet. You've got the majority of the scales, which are these small ones, which cover the entire body, as well as the larger area ones, so like these, as well as both ones on the arms, here and here. And then you've got this central column. The central column is also matched in the same colour as the fins on the spine, as well as these bigger scales on the feet, not on the arms, just the legs. So we've got lots to think about, lots to consider, but the first bit we're starting with is the hair. And beginning with the hair, we're creating a very complicated, rather extraordinary mix that you probably wouldn't even dream of. So to begin with, we're going to take 4 parts of Magos purple. This is the purple that we probably see on the box art, but I'm just putting my own little spin onto this. We're going to take 1 part Doomfire magenta, which is going to be extremely strong. And it's going to override the Magos purple and really intensify it. So we don't want it too intense, so we're going to thin it down to 12 parts Lamy medium. I've created a rough mix in the Citadel Skull palette. So just as a reminder, 4 parts Magos purple, 1 part Doomfire magenta, 12 parts Lamy medium for a really thin mix. We're going to apply it all over. Now you've got these little ties in the hair here, and this is great to break up the sections. So we can start, say, here and just work our way to the end, start there, work our way to the end. Just really take your time here. The Lamy medium, so much strength of it, is really going to help with the flow. We're not going to worry about drying lines because the beauty of it, the model's primed in white scar. We're going to dry brush in white scar in the next stage, so we're not going to catch any details. So just take your time, don't worry about the drying lines. You shouldn't really get that many. Just really check, move your model about, get different angles of light to really see, because even when I painted it, there's little blotches where you miss it. There's little sections that you really need to get a small airbrush into, and just take your time, especially as we come to the other end of the details. But being so thin with Lamy medium, we can quickly dry off the brush. With a damp brush, not completely wet, but with a damp brush we can wipe the details clean because the Lamy medium has made it an extremely thin mix. Now, why I've had such a big mix, I've also painted the hair of Miao Ying in a human form in the exact same way. Even though she's going in a separate video, if you're doing both at the same time, you might as well. Just saves time. So next up, I'm dry brushing and highlighting the hair. Now, I really have fallen in love with this pink that I've created, and you've got a personal choice here. Do you want it to be box art, law accurate, or do you want to have your own take? And I want to have my own take on here. But if you do want it law accurate, then you're just really going to apply more of what I'm applying here. I'm not going to go with white scar. I've gone with Praxity White. This is a dry brush paint. It's going to be a lot less streaky, dry brushing it over all of those strands. And really, if you like this kind of style, I've just applied it as proper dry brushing, catching all of those raised edges. Now, you could apply it a lot heavier and a lot more to really get rid of the pink, so it's just recessed shading and keep it all sort of grey-white. But the reason I like Praxity White, A, it's a dry brush paint, so again, it's not as streaky, but it's also got a creamier look to the white. It's not pure white scar like this, but it's not going to matter if we accidentally catch these details, because it's still going to be white. So just take your time, dry brush as little or as much as you want. For me, I find rather than having just pure sort of greyish hair, this kind of paint is going to really blend nicely, especially when we do the colours later on. So it is personal choice, but that's how I'm doing mine. Next up, we're focusing on the soft inner details of the mouth, the ears and the eyes. Now they are a bright vivid pink. We are going to shade them down a bit further in the next stage, but to begin with we need to make a mix. And the mix I'm using in the Citadel Skull palette is going to be 4 parts of Lamia Medium and 1 part of Doomfire Magenta. We want that real bright vivid pink that we see on the box art. Now where this is applied, in the ears, we don't want to catch the outer edge because that's going to be purple. We want a small amount in the eyes to create that nice little bit of recessed shading. And then we've got all the gum line that's going around the teeth, not the actual tongue itself. But don't worry, if we catch that, we can quickly dry the brush off. Even if it's a little drying line of pink, it's going to have a dark purple look at the end. So just take your time. Again, if we catch the teeth, don't worry about correcting at this stage because we're going to be shading it down. We can always touch up the white scar at a later stage. Next up, we're painting the tongue, and I've created a small mix here. So we're looking at 2 parts Shyish Purple to roughly 1 part Luxian Purple. It's going to have the real intensity of the Shyish in that sense of darkness, but have the richness of the Luxian too. So mix that together. We haven't thinned it down. Start at the back of the tongue and just bring the paint all the way down. Let it settle into that centre recess, and you'll get a very similar box art looking tongue. Next up, while our mouth is still drying, we want to base coat the whiskers. And the colour I'm using here is pure Luxian Purple. Now it's not thinned down, so we need to be speedy with the contrast paint because we don't want the drying lines. So we're painting it entirely in that paint. I started at the tip here, went all the way down, turn the dragon round, do the other side, just making sure there's no white left. We are going to shade it down further with the previous base mix. I'm going to use that previous base mix in the next stage to do the central scales as well as the fins. But I'm going to be adding Lamia Medium to that mix to help with the flow, but I'll explain that in the next step. Next up, we're taking that previous mix that we used to create the tongue, and we're doubling the strength because we need to add some Lamia Medium here to really help with the flow because we're covering such a large surface area. So where it was 2 parts Shyish Purple and 1 part Luxian Purple, we're now creating a mix of 4 parts Shyish Purple, 2 parts Luxian Purple, and 1 part Lamia Medium to really help with the flow. And we're doing all of these spine scales that you see here. So all these fins, all of these scales that we see in the box art that are darker. We've got the ones that are on the knee pads, not the arms though, it's just the feet. And then starting here, the whiskers, we're painting this section here. Start here, we put a bit of paint on, wash your brush, and we can feather out the colour to have that natural transition into the Luxian Purple. There's a lot to cover here. Just take your time. Start, say for instance, start here, do this side, finish it off, go to the other side. The Lamia Medium is really going to help the flow. Take your time, and then we can move on to the next colour. Next up, we're adding a bit of shading and definition to those details. For all that purple we've just painted, so the fins, as well as the scales that are going down the central column, I've shaded them entirely with Knoll oil, and I've done the whiskers too. Now for the actual mouth, we want to just darken down that pink and put a bit of shading in. And the colour I've used here is Caribou Crimson. And I've used this on the tongue too, just to provide a bit of shading. There's a lot to do, and for the fins particularly, we really need to check on pooling. There are a couple of little areas that I've caught, and again, just move your brush around and let it settle into the recesses, but not too heavily. It's important to let all of that purple dry before moving on to the other scales, so we can take this opportunity to paint all the claws and the talons and the horns. And the colour I'm using here is Bacilla Carlin Grey. I've thinned this down ever so slightly to help with the flow, especially on the larger horns. So we're talking 4 parts Bacilla Carlin Grey to 1 part Lamy Medium. Now, quite simply, we're base coating it all over. Let it dry fully, and then we're going to add a bit more definition to those horns by shading it with Nuln Oil. Take your time, let the first stage dry fully before applying the Nuln Oil, and again let the Nuln Oil dry before moving on to the next stage. Next up, I'm painting the teeth, keeping it nice and simple, using Skeleton Horde. Obviously both sides, don't forget them. Next up, it's time for what I consider to be the fun part. We are doing all of the dragon scales as well as Miao Ying's dragon flesh in one whole single colour, and we need to create a rather large mix, and I use the Citadel Skull palette to make this mix in. So for the colour that I've gone for, it is a mixed ratio. We are taking 6 parts of Luxian purple in a rough mix to roughly 2 parts Shyish purple to roughly 1 part Lamy medium, and the reason being we want the scales to be bright and vivid. That's the Luxian purple, and that's the same for the flesh tone. But we also want a stronger finish, something to really settle into the recess shades, and Luxian purple can be a bit of a funny paint when painting it over such a large area. And the Shyish purple will mix in nicely. Now Shyish purple is very strong, and that's why we've got the 6 parts of Luxian purple to 2 parts of the Shyish purple. And the Lamy medium is going to act both in helping to flow, helping to thin both paints down to get to this colour consistency, and it will act as a subtle varnish. Now, when we're painting it, start at the top. It doesn't get any simpler than that. There's no point starting at the bottom. Gravity will pull, and we don't want pulling at all, except into the natural recesses. Start at the face, paint the face entirely. Be very careful as you move around the features such as the hair. Now the Lamy medium in place, we can wash the brush and quickly wipe off any excess paint if we accidentally catch those areas, and then take the scales on each side one at a time, just paint down, finish that area, do the other side, go to the next area. And it will take a while, but it is incredibly satisfying. This model is built for contrast paints. With all that recess in place, it is beautiful. So we get that done, and then we're going to shade it down to the next stage. Next up, we're creating that 3 tones of purple that I talked about at the beginning. So we'll have the separate for the fins and the scales that we saw here. We've got the flesh tone of the face, but we're going to darken down the scales only. So the colour I'm using here is Leviathan Purple. And I thinned this down with Lamy medium. So in the palette, I've created a mix of roughly 4 parts Lamy medium to 1 part Leviathan Purple. We're essentially turning this into a shade, having the richness of the purple, but not the intensity. And like I said, we're painting it over the scales only. I haven't done the scales on this foot, or the other one. You don't need to worry about those type of scales, and we're not doing the soft flesh. The soft flesh being the hands, the feet, the face. But all those scales that we see going down, we've painted those entirely. It gives this rich purple vibrant look, and we've now started doing the 3 tones that I talked about. And finally, for all of our purple details, I want to take them one step a little further, and that's just to really enrich the colour that you're seeing here. And the colour I'm using is the Shade Paint Druchii Violet, and I've thinned this down ever so slightly. I've created a large pool in the Citadel Skull palette, and we're talking roughly 4 parts of Druchii Violet to 1 part of Lamy medium to help with the flow. And I've applied this over every single purple detail, so all those 3 tones, they've had a shading of Druchii Violet, and just gives this rich, vibrant purple look. And once we've done that, we can start highlighting. I'm going to highlight all the scales first. Normally I like to paint everything battle ready, but because we're going to do a lot of dry brushing, I don't want to catch any of the metallic detailing, because I want that to be really pure and crisp at the end. We don't want to have to go and correct ourselves, so it's actually worth highlighting and getting all the purple to parade level ready right now. It's time to begin highlighting, and Miao Ying the Storm Dragon is so beautifully designed, it begs to be dry brushed, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Now the first colour I'm using is Blue Horror. You'd be thinking, why would you be using blue on a model like this? Well, when you look at the box art image, and I'm going to be focusing on the purple scales that we see of the main body, so not the fin purple, the chest purple, and not the soft flesh, just these scales. You look at the box art image, and Games Workshop, the Eavy Metal team, they have used a blue highlighting colour, and Blue Horror really works. If I turn it slightly in the light, you see it's got this real beautiful sheen. So we need to be super gentle. We don't want to chip the paintwork that we've done. The Lamy medium should help give it a slight varnish, but if we're really heavy because of the sharper edges, it can end up chipping. So just be nice and gentle, just small brush strokes like this. And just take your time and work your way up the model. And obviously being scales, we want to catch the edges, so there's no point, if you see the scales in this direction, there's no point going this way. That's not going to work. We just want to gently stroke up the model, catching every single scale. Take your time, there's a lot to do. It's not a job worth rushing. The next colour I'm highlighting with is Slanesh Grey. And once again, I'm using the dry brushing method here. Now this colour I've used over a select area. So this is going to be all the fins that we see along the spine, all the plates along its belly cavity, going all the way underneath, right up to the end of the tail. And I've used this on the whiskers too. Although it's going to be nice and subtle, it does give a natural highlight. And anything on the arms, the plating here, and here, here, and here. The places I haven't done it, obviously I'm not doing the scales we did in Blue Horror, and I'm not touching the soft flesh, because the soft flesh I'm going to do in a different colour in the next stage. We're now focusing on the soft flesh of Miao Ying in the Storm Dragon form, and we need to be more precise here. Dry brushing will do no good. It will catch some of the edges, but you're going to end up hitting others, and it's going to end up having that chalking effect. So we really want to take our time on such a beautiful, eloquent model. Now the colour I'm using here is the Kyla Lilac. It is a very bright purple, and it's absolutely perfect for the skin tone of the soft flesh. So this is all the claws, the soft flesh around there, the feet, as well as the face. Just take your time. There is a lot to do, but it's so much more worth it having it precise and neat, because it makes her look absolutely beautiful. Now normally, as I say, I wouldn't be doing highlighting at this stage. I'd be doing all the base coating and getting it to battle ready. But because I've done the face, we might as well focus on getting all those highlights done. So for all of that little pink flesh, so with in the ears, around the gums, and the dotting of the eyes, I've used Fulgrim Pink. It's bright, it's vivid, it's exactly what you want for this gorgeous model. Then, for all the teeth, I've done highlights of Screaming Skull. In a sense, it's more of a relayer, because I've caught some of the edges, especially on the insides, with the Doomfire Magenta Pink. So it's just really touching them up and making them brighter and more vivid. Then, for the actual tongue itself, I've highlighted with Slanesh Grey. And finally, because I'm doing all that highlighting, might as well finish off all the colours that we've done so far. I've highlighted all the horns and talons with Administratum Grey. There's a lot of work to do, but by doing it now, the model is almost practically done. And we're back to base coating and shading again. So let's start with all of the leather straps. There's not many. It is just covering the armour and strapping it to Miao Ying herself. So you can see they're just here, here, round the back here, and obviously there. And the colour I've used here is Gore Grunter Fur. I want it bright, I want it vivid. It's going to stand out and contrast nicely against all this dark, rich purple. Now, while that's drying, we're going to focus on the rocks on the base. Now, I want it to be distinct from the horn colour, which we did in Basilicana Grey. So the colour I'm using here is Rattling Grime. And I thinned this down ever so slightly into a palette, so the Citadel Skull palette. And we're talking roughly 3 parts Rattling Grime to 1 part Lamy Medium. The Lamy Medium is really going to help the flow, rather than taking all that intensity of the colour away, and we're just shading it all over. And the rocks are so perfectly sculpted, you're going to get so many different variants of the grey colour. It's just going to look really nice and neat. Now, once that's dry, once the Gore Grunter Fur is dry, we're going to shade all those details. So we're shading the Gore Grunter Fur, the rocks, and the base, if you're using the Agreed Badland base, with Targor Raid Shade. Once again, I've poured this into a pool into the Citadel palette, the Skull one, and I've just taken my time, start the base, started on the rocks, Do it section by section. Make sure it doesn't pull, especially on the rocks, because they are a lot of verticality, so gravity's going to pull it. And then a small layer over all the straps. And then we can move on to the next stage. And just to point out, don't forget, she does have Gorgonta fur colouring straps. Just these two here. And it goes around the other side, of course. Now, as we've done all the highlighting across all the other features so far, we might as well carry on that kind of style. So I'm highlighting all of that brown, all of the rocks, and all the base in one go. And the colour I'm using here is Carrick Stone, and we can very cheekily dry brush it. So the base, absolutely dry brush it, is not going to stand out too much, and that's not going to be a problem because the way I'm going to base it, and I'll explain how I'm doing that later, is going to really stand out and you're not really going to notice it. But if there were any patches, you can dry brush it in Carrick Stone, or you can go something brighter like Screaming Skull. But Carrick Stone's what I've gone with. Same for the rocks. Make sure obviously they're completely dry. We can dry brush the brown in these areas because they're nice wide open spaces, and if we aim the brush towards where the metal's going to be, it doesn't matter if we catch those. We will need to switch, however, to classic edge highlighting for these two bits. They cannot be dry brushed. It's been a long time coming, but we're finally finishing off the base coating colours of our model, and it is the metallic details. So to begin with, we're going bright silvers, what we see for most of the Grand Cathay range. And the perfect silver for this is the base coat Iron Hand Steel. There are 3 areas that we're applying this on: the main chest armour piece and the 2 shoulder bits. You're looking at 2 to 3 base coats thinned down in a normal way just to get that real nice shine. Now once that's done, we're focusing on the gold details, and we're going classic with Retributor armour. Now there's certain areas to point out where we're applying this. Is over these round bits on the straps. On the back you've got these 2 rectangular bits. You've got the 2 pieces in the hair. And then you've got the main golden crest itself. Now once that's all done, we're going to Stormhost Silver. And we're treating this not as a layer paint, but as a base coat paint. We can do it now to save time. We're picking out the gems. There's just a few to note. You've got the big giant one on the chest piece. You've got the big one on the crest piece. I've also picked out the 2 individual ones on the crest piece. And when you go to the hair, I picked out the 2 in those as well. Now the next stage is purely optional. Because it's a big model with all those scales, it is inevitable that chipping is going to occur over time. So we can absolutely varnish our model to protect it. And the varnish I'm using here is Storm Shield, and I have thinned this down ever so slightly with Lamy Medium. Now Lamy Medium does have its own varnishing properties, I have found, especially in contrast painting, and this also helps the flow. So I've created a roughly 3-to-1 mix, so 3 parts Storm Shield, 1 part Lamy Medium mixed in the Citadel Skull palette. Now I've taken it section by section, applied it, and you end up getting this real nice natural sheen. It's not glossy. It's just almost satiny, which is really nice texture on the scales. Now applying it, we don't want to make it pull, so just take it section by section. Don't overload your brush. It's not like we've got to worry about drying lines. Just start a section, say under the ropes here, and just bring it down, do it bit by bit. It is purely optional. You don't have to do that. For me, this model means a lot to me, and I want to protect it. Next up, we're shading our metallic details. We've got 1 slightly trickier paint to do and 2 bog standard ones we do for shading. So we'll start with the simple one first, and that is Reichland Flesh Shade. And I'm using this for all of our gold details. Quite simple, just traditional shading. Now next up, we're going to create a mix. And the colour I'm using here is Black Legion, and I've created this in a 1-to-1 mix with Lamy Medium. And essentially what we're doing, if you look at the chest and shoulder panels that I've done, it is simple recess shading. Lamy Medium is going to thin the black and help it to flow. We're just concentrating over the recesses. It doesn't matter if you actually paint these details. With the Black Legion, we just want to settle it around, just don't get it heavily onto that. But if you do, we can always correct with the Iron Hand Steel. It takes a long time, there's a lot to do. Now once that's done, I've taken Nuln Oil and I've applied this very sparingly over certain parts of the silver. And this is just the outer edges all the way around. So again, the outer edges. I've not done the flat paneling, I'm leaving that bright and silver. Once that's done, we can move on to the highlighting. And next up, it's time to highlight our metallic details. And we're keeping it really nice, super simple and classic here. Our silver details are so big and wide, we can dry brush them with Stormhost Silver, catching all of the edges and all of that extra detailing that we did the recessed shading around. Really nice and simple. For the gold, once again, with being super simple, I would recommend using traditional highlighting with a paintbrush, and I'm using Liberator Gold. You could try and dry brush it, but you end up catching the other details, and if you've got it exquisite looking, you really don't want to rush this beautiful model. And once we've done that, we're going to work on the gems. And finally, it's time to paint the gems. And I've opted for two colours here. The pink one that we see on the box art, which I've done on the chest and the crest. And I've also gone for jade, just to break up the colour scheme and make some areas of interest. So I've done the two there in jade and the two there in jade. So for the jade ones, nice and simple, just a very thin amount of Eldari Emerald. We're not filling it down with Lamy Medium, just a small tip on the brush of the paint and apply it to the Stormhost Silver gem. Now for our pink ones, we're going to do something slightly different. To begin with, paint it entirely in Doomfire Magenta. Again, just a small amount on the tip of the brush, paint the entire gem, let it dry fully. Now these gems do have an edge highlight that can be done around them. And the colour I've used here is Fulgrim Pink. Just take a really small layer brush, just a bit of Fulgrim Pink on the tip, just catch each of those edges and do a traditional highlight. And once the gems are all done and they're all dry, I've applied a small amount of Art Coat. Just that gloss varnish gives it that extra shiny look and gem feel. And with that, Miao Ying is actually fully painted. We're not even in that battle ready stage, we're already at parade level ready, and she looks beautiful. But we're going to work on the base and give some couple of tips in the next part. There seems to be quite a tradition with Warhammer fantasy models that people base them quite plainly and simply, be it just a bit of static grass and maybe a couple of rocks. And the YouTubers who got the advanced copies early for free from Warhammer Official have often followed in that same suit. Now there's nothing wrong with that. In the end of the day, these are your miniatures and you base them how you feel you want them to represent the tabletop. But traditionally, because Warhammer Fantasy is a game first rather than a miniature hobby first, people tend to not really focus on the bases. And it's a shame because things like Miao Ying, the Storm Dragon, has such a large open base area, we can really work to the advantage here. And you can see this across the other models that I've done. So there's things that I can recommend that you can purchase. Amazon being the main place that people would go to. There are other places, I'm sure, like local hobby stores. But things like cherry trees, bamboo, little brass sort of gold coloured Buddhas, dragons. You can even buy the bigger Buddhas. And you'll see like this that I did on the Sentinels. Well, like this female one here that I'm going to apply to the Miao Ying base. Now for these bigger ones, they do come in the polished wood to begin with. What I've done here is I sprayed it in Chaos Black Primer. That drying, it takes a lot longer to dry than normal because it is obviously different material. And then I sprayed it in Retributor Armor Spray to get that real gold look. And then you can shade it in a traditional way. Reichland Flesh Shade is what I did here, followed by a dry brush in circular motions of Liberator Gold. Applying heavier things like this, super glue would work, but obviously if you're attaching it to the base, it will come off. I recommend using epoxy resin. The one that I use is the Gorilla version. Really seals it down. It's hardly ever going to come off unless you really rip it off, and you're going to have to apply a lot of force. So that is my recommendation. Just apply a lot of different things. You've got an open area, really make those models stand out rather than keeping them bog standard and simple. And there we have it. Miao Ying the Storm Dragon is complete, and she is an absolute true thing of beauty. Her colour scheme, the size of the model and the exquisite detail makes this the model of the year for me. Now hopefully you'll feel the passion I've put into this model with the tutorial. And taking that time to create a dynamic base just really adds to the model. Plain open areas just doesn't feel right for me. Now I'd highly recommend this model, whether it's for the army or as a painting project. I'm actually upset she's finished, that's how great she is. But luckily I've got a human form coming next. Now if this tutorial has given you the knowledge and inspiration needed to paint your Storm Dragon, then please take that meaningful moment and click that like button. Share so others can create their perfect Storm Dragon too. Subscribe so you can see all of the latest. And check out the other Grand Cathay tutorials I've done, because I'm the only YouTuber out there covering every single model of this range. And you can also check out my Instagram for all of the latest. Supporting me does something wonderful. It means I get to support you, the awesome Warhammer community. But until the next time, look after yourselves and happy hobbying.